Look at the picture. See the skull, the part of bone removed, the master race Frankenstein radio controls, the brain thoughts broadcasting radio, the eyesight television, the Frankenstein earphone radio, the threshold brainwash radio, the latest new skull reforming to contain all Frankenstein controls.
Even Governor Tim Walz got in Detroit, Michigan.
All right, look, this is the last video I'm going to make on this topic. I actually want to make it really easy for Harry to be able to debunk me, as well as all the other conservative creators calling this event fake. Harry, if what you're saying is true, it would be so easy for you to prove this was a real event. So this was the original image you posted. We've all seen this image, and we've all seen that video you showed. The problem is this image, as well as that video, have all come from the Harris campaign. And if you'd like to debunk all of us and make us all look stupid, all you gotta do is give us the video of somebody in here. Bro, there are...
Get it hot like Papa John. It's a feminine phenomenon.
Look up and see the gangster computer god concocted new fake starry sky, the worldwide completely controlled deadly degenerative climate and atmosphere through the new world-round translucent exotic gaseous envelope, which the worldwide communist gangster computer god manipulates through countless exactly positioned satellites, the new fake phony stars in the synthetic sky.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. We're using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind.
Good evening. It is Monday, August 12th in the year of our Lord 2024. I am Joe Allen, sitting in for Stephen K. Bannon, who sits right now unjustly in prison. The fact that Steve is in prison is a harsh reality that many people have a hard time facing. You have all kinds of lefties who see his imprisonment as inconsequential. You have lefties who have come to me saying that he's in some sort of Martha Stewart style resort with golf courses and conjugal visits. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in this world of lies, propaganda, deep fakes, and what I call sheep fakes, it's very easy for any person to believe whatever they want to believe. This is what my friend Shane Cashman calls post-reality, a world in which nothing is certain that you see on the screen. And so every person is able to just simply believe what they want. Now, we know that freedom to simply create your own reality has been with us since basically the first lie in the Garden of Eden. But what once were ancient lies in which people deceived each other simply verbally, in the modern era became propaganda, in which modern media allowed for messaging that contained some truth, some falsehood to be spread across populations at scale. And it allowed authorities or even individual organizations and people to manipulate the internal realities of any population, any group, any target audience. Now, in the internet era, now in the era of AI-generated deepfakes, that landscape has become ever more questionable and ever more filled with falsehood. We've gone from lies to propaganda to time-honored selective editing and cheap fakes to deep fakes and what I call sheep fakes. Sheep fakes being a legitimate piece of media that is called fake and allows people to herd the sheep over the cliff to total lack of credibility. If Denver will throw up our first image. as we wait for Denver to throw up the first image. The first image you see here is from a Harris Walls campaign stop at a rally in Detroit. You can see them exiting the plane onto the tarmac with a huge crowd. Now, I had friends who work in AI come to me and tell me that this looks altered. Something is off about it. The color looks off. The crowd itself, if you look at the cell phones, it appears that each cell phone kind of has its own individual screen. And this prompted a number of conservative influencers to accuse the Harris Walls campaign of creating deep fakes of crowds that really do not exist. Now, I would love to believe that. I would love to believe that Harris Walls walked out on a basically empty tarmac and gave their speeches to a basically empty hangar. But the reality is that these crowds are real in Detroit, as they were in Wisconsin, as they were in Las Vegas, and all of these real human beings, however odd the footage looks, these people will be able to vote. And so we can't allow ourselves to be herded by sheepfakes in order to basically discredit the entire MAGA movement. If Denver would just move not to that image, but to the first B-roll image, as I call for it, you can see here a PBS video, and you can see very clearly the tarmac is covered with people. You can see Harrison Walls emerge from the plane. As we move forward here, one of the questions that's been asked a lot, well, where is all the footage from the people on the tarmac? Well, there you have one of hundreds, maybe thousands of images posted all over the internet of that tarmac and that crowd. Now, one of the reasons that people haven't seen these images that are in the kind of conservative circles is because we live in algorithmic ghettos. And in these ghettos, we're only shown what the algorithm thinks we want to see. Now, if Denver can go to the second image, I want to show you a deep fake, an actual deep fake that made the rounds. It was posted, I believe, last Saturday. And so you can see this image is very, very questionable to begin with. There's a kind of uniformity to it. If you look closely, you can see that some of the people's eyes are crossed as if they'd been spawned by kissing cousins. And if Denver can show the third image, you got a close-up, you can see a kind of warped face, the weird crossed eyes. Maybe show the fourth image too, Denver. And you can see kind of this deformity about the images. This is a deep fake. This is an actual deep fake of a Harris Walls event. The problem is that it was created by a parody count called Dr. Literally a Feline with a cat image in the profile pic. And yet that didn't stop extraordinarily influential conservative commentators from accusing the Harris campaign of creating AI deepfakes to inflate the numbers, to make it look like their rallies are drawing huge crowds. The reality is they are drawing huge crowds, and this is a major problem for the MAGA movement. If we could just look at the fifth image. This fifth image was also very curious. It's the same tarmac in Detroit. You see them coming off the plane, same crowd. But if you look closely at the cowling, the jet engine, you can see that there is no reflection, or at least it appears there's no reflection, as if the crowd had simply been photoshopped in. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, well, okay, maybe this actually is a deep fake. It would be strange to create a deep fake of a crowd when any number of means could be employed to verify the reality of the crowd, but maybe they did. And then a friend noted that the crowd, due to the camera lens, is probably much farther away than it appears in the photo. And as I thought about it, and you look at the shape of the cowling, it is a convex surface. And if you think of the surveillance cameras you see in all sorts of the grocery stores and whatnot, a convex surface will extend the lower part of an image and shrink the eye level part. And so if Denver could just, to finish up here, show the second B-roll. And this is again from PBS. This is the exact same stop. And unless they created an elaborate video deepfake that they put on PBS, you can see very clearly that same illusion in which it appears that there is no crowd in the reflection on the cowling, but hundreds, maybe thousands of independent videos show that there were indeed crowds. Now, what is the problem with all this? Why am I picking on conservative influencers for spreading these sorts of images with the accusation that Harris is creating AI deepfakes of their crowd? Number one, in a post-reality environment, you have to keep your wits about you. There is every reason to believe that any image might be a deepfake. If Denver would throw up the third B-roll, you can see here images created with AI from Flux AI. These are not real people. These are deepfakes. These are AI-generated human beings. And as good as they look, as much as you would love to hear any one of these ladies say, "I love you," these ladies don't exist. But these ladies will tell you they love you, just as any sort of AI-generated figure will. We are entering an era of post-reality in which people will simply want to believe something, and so they will. The problem is the total decoupling from reality, being awash in digital delusion. But the second and perhaps most dangerous problem is that in this sea of digital delusion, you are going to have authorities, both governmental and corporate, rise up to clarify all of this, to distinguish between what is real, in air quotes, and what is fake. And what's going to happen is probably going to look a lot like what we see in the United Kingdom right now, in which anyone accused of disseminating unapproved information, whether it's real or not, could find themselves in jail for a Facebook post, for a retweet. What we are entering in is both an age of information totalitarianism, if it is not stopped, coupled with a total mind warp of digital delusions. So I urge the War Room Posse, I do my best not to lead you astray, I urge the War Room Posse, while Steve Bannon is in jail and can't keep these people in line, to keep your wits about you. Don't fall for the cheap fakes, don't fall for the deep fakes, and don't be herded off the cliff by sheepfakes. If we could go into the UK protest video and then bring in the great Rick Munn.
We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by online commentary. I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard and maybe in a different country?
Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we will come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the yobs who are causing the problems for community.
Hello, what's your name, Chief? Yeah, lovely.
Expecting you.
Yeah, have you ever got to come in?
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
I'll be expecting you.
assuming these images are real, and I believe they are, that looks like some horrific far-right thuggery to me. If we could bring in Rick Munn, the great Rick Munn from TNT Radio, coming at us from Ireland. Rick has been following both the UK riots and also the government crackdown that has come in their wake, and the specter of increasing information control. Rick, how are you? And can you tell us what the current state of the UK is now insofar as the rioting goes, and what is the government trying to do about it?
First of all, I'm doing well. Thank you, Joe. And thank you for inviting me back on to have a chat with you today. Well, since the last time we spoke, which I think was last week, the riots have spread a little bit further afield. They're contained mostly within England at this point in time. Wales, Scotland, little bits of pockets of sporadic violence in Northern Ireland, but by and large, they're taking place in England. And there's a lot of accusations doing the rounds, justifiably so, about two-tier policing within England. In fact, notably, our mutual friend, someone who we both admire and adore very much, Elon Musk, has even weighed in on this one, brandishing Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, as two-tier Keir. That's his new adopted nickname, something wouldn't be amiss that Donald Trump would throw out to one of his political adversaries. So this whole two-tier policing business comes around, well, there's policing for one group, not so much policing for another group. So Hare Hills riots in Leeds a few weeks ago, we saw the police running from areas while their vehicles were torched, buses were burnt, streets were destroyed. They ran in fear. A few days later in Southport, also in London, we saw them aggressively kettling certain protesters and arresting them. And we're being told that the full force of the law will be swiftly felt by all these perpetrators, although it seems to be the full force of the law is felt more by certain groups and more swiftly upon certain groups than other groups, which of course reinforces this notion of two-tier policing, something that the government is at pains to deny, vehemently, strenuously deny. It's a gaslighting masterclass from the British government right now that they're being equal treatment of everyone. The reality is something different.
So looking at this entire information landscape where you have all of these kind of competing narratives, it's the far right that's responsible for this. It is the Muslim hordes, the invaders that are responsible for this. How do you weigh those narratives? And what do you see, again, how does this relate to that kind of two-tier policing and the obvious bias coming from the British and the UK media and the government in the UK?
Well, the UK mainstream media, or the legacy media, is very much on board with the government, of course, as they are state agents in reality. And so the party line, or the government line, is that the vast majority of people that are taking to the streets in the UK now are far rights. They're fascists. It's a right-wing, extreme right-wing mobilization onto the streets of Britain to cause maximum chaos and disorder, to burn, loot, and do all sorts of damage, to kill possibly. So the people that protest against this, Joe, interestingly, are labelled anti-fascists. So the people that are right-wing extremists are labelled fascists, and the people that are opposing anybody that really wants to have a monitor placed on the borders and stop mass migration, illegal and legal, are deemed to be right-wing fascists. So the media's picked up on this one. They've ran with it hard, and it's almost like a repetition of the scandemic years when anyone that was against government lockdowns, for example, or against vaccine mandates was aggressively branded an anti-vaxxer. That terminology and the mentality behind demonizing that particular group during the COVID years has now effectively been ported across to anyone that's opposing mass, illegal or legal migration into the UK and Ireland at this time now. It's the right, the extreme right, the far right, fascists, even going now to drop the N-word, as in Nazis. Nazis were being branded Nazis as well, if we just want a little bit of border control. So that's the extent that we're at as per right now.
You know, we've heard a lot from Keir Starmer, and speaking not only about the far-right thuggery, using this sort of language to demonize the native population, but also, you know, in the threats against people's activities, both online and offline. How big of a difference is this? How big of a shift is this new prime minister? Has it really always been at this level of bias, or does this new labor leader really represent a sea change in the way that the state is cracking down on the native British population?
This guy, Joe, in the last 5.5 weeks, he officially won the election on the 4th of July, 2024. So what are we now? The 10th of August, 12th of August, whatever date it is today. So you're talking 5 or 6 weeks. The guy has caused probably as much, if not more, damage in this short space of time as his predecessor, Rishi Sunak, who, by the way, was unelected, who took over from Liz Truss, who, by the way, was unelected and only lasted 6 weeks, who took over from Boris Johnson, who was our previous last elected prime minister. He's done untold amounts of damage. And what he refuses to do, and let me make this very clear, he refuses to acknowledge the fact that vast majority of the people have concerns and fears and hesitations, and they're worried about the future. They're worried about the country being flooded. Not everybody's completely against it, but they certainly have fears and concerns that are not being addressed. They're simply being labeled as an extensive right-wing group. And within the people that are protesting and within the people that are rallying, of course, there are right-wing extremists, there are fascist thugs, but the vast majority of people are not. They're just normal, everyday, blue-collar, middle-class, working people who are concerned about their future and their children's future. The government refused to acknowledge it, so tensions are starting to build and build and build, and nothing at all is being done by the so-called leader, Keir Starmer, to lower tensions at this point in time. In fact, if anything, he seems to be fanning the flames of division and strife.
Real quick, Rick, we've got 2 minutes, and if you don't mind, I'll hold you over and just speak for just a moment on the other side of the break. But in this remaining 2 minutes, can you just give us an indication, how are things going in Ireland, where you are at? Are you concerned for yourself that your own coverage could lead to the cops, the bobbies knocking on your door?
The way I see it is, okay, if you have a modicum of common sense, you won't get a knock on the door. So I'm reporting factual information. I'm giving my informed opinion on it. I am not inciting anyone to take to the streets and burn or loot or kill or ethnically cleanse, and I never will. I've always been clear right from the get-go that I don't condone any acts of violence, and I don't encourage any acts of violence. I believe the only way out of this is through peaceful mass non-compliance. So they can knock my door if they like, Joe. I'm pretty happy to stand over anything that I've said, and probably could give a damn good account of myself in any court of law if it came down to that. And, that's just the way it is. So I don't fear that, but I'm sure they're chomping at the bit. There's a lot of people in the crosshairs. Maybe they're just waiting to slip up for the wrong word to come out in the heat of the moment so we can say, gotcha. And next thing you know, you're in front of the magistrate.
Well, Rick, I know, having known you now for a couple of years, that you are absolutely careful with your words, even if occasionally you are prone to a creative flourish. It is you are not
artistic
a man
license.
of hate.
Artistic
in fact,
license.
a little background on Rick. Rick spent much of his youth in Africa as an evangelist. So it is not as if he is some sort of, backward provincial Irish leprechaun. He is a man of the world. Rick, if we can just hold you over, we got a couple of ads, and then we will be right back to discuss the possible fall of the West and the rise of a digital totalitarian state. Stay tuned.
Americans are tired and frustrated by a stalling economy, inflation, endless wars, and the relentless assault on our values. Thankfully, there are companies like Patriot Mobile that still believe in America and our Constitution. They're on the front lines fighting for the First and Second Amendments, sanctity of life, and our military and first responder heroes. Take a stand for conservative causes and put America first by switching to Patriot Mobile today. You'll get the same nationwide coverage as the big providers because Patriot Mobile operates across all 3 major networks. Plus, they back their service with a coverage guarantee. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Go to patriotmobile.com/Bannon or call 972-PATRIOT. Right now, get a free month when you use the offer code Bannon. Switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile provider, Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Bannon or call 972-PATRIOT for your free month of service today. In these crazy times, there is peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But you're not financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings. They're a hedge against inflation. With Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Secure your family's savings today. Text Bannon to 989898 and receive a free info kit on gold. Plus, this August only, Birch Gold is giving away free Trump silver coins with any purchase. This brand new one-of-a-kind silver coin features Trump boldly raising his fist in the moments after the attempt on his life. Don't miss your chance to own this special piece of history, a celebration of a leader dedicated to our security, preserved in the security of a precious metals coin. Secure your savings today and get your free Trump silver coins. Text Bannon to 989898 today. That's Bannon to the number 989898. In these crazy times, there is peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But you're not financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings. They're a hedge against inflation. With Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Secure your family's savings today. Text Bannon to 989898 and receive a free info kit on gold. Plus, this August only, Birch Gold is giving away free Trump silver coins with any purchase. This brand new one-of-a-kind silver coin features Trump boldly raising his fist in the moments after the attempt on his life. Don't miss your chance to own this special piece of history, a celebration of a leader dedicated to our security, preserved in the security of a precious metals coin. Secure your savings today and get your free Trump silver coins. Text Bannon to 989898 today. That's Bannon to the number 989898. Americans are tired and frustrated by a stalling economy, inflation, endless wars, and the relentless assault on our values. Thankfully, there are companies like Patriot Mobile that still believe in America and our Constitution. They're on the front lines fighting for the First and Second Amendments, sanctity of life, and our military and first responder heroes. Take a stand for conservative causes and put America first by switching to Patriot Mobile today. You'll get the same nationwide coverage as the big providers because Patriot Mobile operates across all three major networks. Plus, they back their service with a coverage guarantee. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Go to patriotmobile.com/Bannon or call 972-PATRIOT. Right now, get a free month when you use the offer code Bannon. Switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile provider, Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Bannon or call 972-PATRIOT for your free month of service today. You all recognize Jim Rickards as a regular guest and wise man of the War Room. His grasp of the intersection between geopolitics and capital markets is unmatched. His financial newsletter, Strategic Intelligence, is essential reading for anyone concerned about protecting your own wealth. As you've seen during his War Room appearances, Jim has a knack for making the complex simple. And every month, Strategic Intelligence cuts through the noise and delivers actionable financial guidance. Plus, War Room members get a free copy of Jim's The New Case for Gold. This is an amazing follow-up to Ron Paul's classic. And what makes Jim's book even more crucial is that he's not a gold bug. He'll help you understand gold's significance on the global stage as well as in your own portfolio. Go sign up now and claim your free book at our exclusive website, rickardswarroom.com. That's rickardswarroom.com.
All this nonsense, all this spin, they can't handle the truth.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
All right, welcome back. I'm Joe Allen, sitting in for Stephen K. Bannon, who sits in prison, apparently now alongside a number of people who posted the wrong thing online in the UK. If we could bring in Rick Munn again. Rick, I've followed your coverage now for over 2 years. You've taught me so much, not only about the philosophy of a religious man, but also just about the landscape in Europe, especially from a critical perspective. Where can we find your coverage on TNT? How do people get there? And what do you got coming up right now?
Basically, we have a website, tnt.news. We're an independent broadcaster. We've been going now for 2.5 years, based out of the Gold Coast in Australia, but obviously streaming across the world on any major streaming platform, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble. You can download our app, TNT Radio, from the App Store or the Google Play Store. 24/7 live broadcasting, current affairs, uncensored, unscripted topics. You've been on my show many times, Joe, and for that I'm eternally grateful. I have a show called Locked and Loaded. It broadcasts every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. UK time, and obviously you can adjust that for wherever you are in the world. So that's where I'm at, or that's where I'm based out of. And what are we covering at the minute? Well, literally the breaking news of the day. The station's called TNT, Today's News Talk, so we try and keep it as topical as possible, even within the hour, or even within the broadcasting window that I have of 2 hours. We keep trying to keep updated stories coming in thick and fast, because the way things are at the minute, it's information overload. In fact, I noted down some of your phrases there when you were doing your intro. We're awash in digital delusion, and some of us have got caught up in a total mind warp of digital delusion. So I suppose what I'm trying to do is keep a little bit of sanity and a little bit of humor to all these dark, nefarious activities that are going on in the world, and that's what I'm going to try and do for as long as I'm allowed to remain on air.
Well, Rick, we really appreciate your light. We really appreciate your intellect, and we hope to see you back on the War Room soon. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Now, one of my favorite authors is the science fiction writer, and I guess you could say precursor to sociologist and historian, H.G. Wells. Wells, of course, wrote The Time Machine. Wells wrote When the Sleeper Wakes. Wells also wrote a book that is really close to my heart, The Island of Dr. Moreau. And in all of these science fiction works, you see a warning, a dire warning about what will happen if human beings go the wrong direction in a techno-industrial society. Wells has a dark side, though. If the left says that we need to focus on the evil racism of Charles Darwin or the evil history of slavery of our own founding fathers, then we need to also look at the deep and oftentimes genocidal socialist motives behind some of our favorite authors, such as H.G. Wells, who was, in fact, an early Fabian. To talk about this, I'd like to bring in another thinker whom I respect tremendously, Courtenay Turner. Courtenay, host of the Courtenay Turner podcast, has covered the Fabians, the Theosophists, and all of the various threads weaving together to form what is apparently the seeds of global government. And Courtenay, if you could just link for us, if you will, the Fabian Society and this new labor leader, Keir Starmer.
Well, thank you for having me. And there's a lot of, it's a very intricate web, I guess is how we could say it. But the Fabian Society was started initially actually by something called the Fellowship of New Life, which you were talking about, kind of the one world government and of course the one world religion, and they're all very intertwined. And this Fellowship New Life was very religious in its sentiments. It was very theosophical, I would say, in its sentiments. And it was this idea that's kind of reminiscent of what the Illuminati was actually called, the Perfectibilists. It was called the Order of the Perfectibilists initially. It's like this idea of the perfectibility of man. So, of course, it's, they believe that they have the gnosis and therefore they are the ones who can guide us and to help perfect us. And this is a similar thread. I'm not saying necessarily that they are intertwined, although Anthony Sutton would argue that lots of evidence does indicate that they are, and that more research needs to be done. I think, unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to finish that research. But the thread, the sentiment is very similar. And so from there, it was an offshoot that created the Fabian Society. And worth noting, they, of course, named it after Fabius Maximus. He was also known as the Cunctator, which meant the delayer. So it's this idea. They had the mascot of the tortoise, and they say when I strike hard, and they wanted to use that name because it was this idea of incremental policies. And so incrementalism is this kind of slow and steady, gradually these movements that seem like they are organic, bottom up, but actually, as we talked last time, it's they say educate, agitate, and then organize. And so it's really infiltrated. So they're not necessarily organic. However, they work through grassroots, bottom up, and then they strike hard. So it seems like it's all at once. And so this is kind of their modus operandus, and they had their mascot of the tortoise, but their coat of arms is actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I would argue that this is a nod to the Hegelian dialectic, this idea of infiltrating from within and having a veneer, an exoteric veneer that is palatable to the opponent, but it's a very similar to the idea of controlled opposition, and leading your controlling the opposition is you lead it from within. So do you ask about what's going on with the Labor Party today? So the Fabian Society actually created something called the Labor Representatives Committee, and that was in 1900s, and that became kind of the founding impetus for the Labor Party. So the Fabian Society is directly connected. It's almost like a sister organization. So as I was talking about, the Fellowship of New Life initially was more of a, kind of spiritual kind of a group. And then the offshoot was to get involved in political movements. And that was the role of the Fabian Society. But they're, so intertwined with so many other things, like the Milner Roundtable groups, the Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Council of Foreign Relations. I would argue it gets very complicated, kind of like the mafia. It's really hard to track down the crime because they have lots of minions doing all of their work. So,
you've mentioned that the Fabian Society, that their coat of arms was a wolf in sheep's clothing, but you see right now these threats from the UK government for nothing more than simply saying things online. It would seem that sheep's clothing has been discarded and the wolf has finally come out. I'm curious, looking at the history of the Fabian Society and its influence on British politics, world politics, these sorts of organizations, oftentimes they'll gain tremendous influence, they'll lose influence and become more irrelevant. They perhaps gain it again. What is the kind of scope of the influence of the Fabian Society, both in its inception, but maybe more importantly, as it stands today?
I think they have tremendous power and tremendous influence, but again, because of the wolf in sheep's clothing, and you're right, I would say, maybe they've shed some of the sheep's clothing, and that's the idea of striking hard. They said it has no impact unless they do strike hard when the time is right. They talked about Fabius Maximus and, defeating Hannibal. It has to be, when the time is, you snap hard. So I would say that it's really hard to detect, but I think they have tremendous impact. They have tremendous impact and power in so many different realms, and it's not just in the British government. Although certainly, I think Tony Blair is a Fabian socialist. There's so many we could go back to, and of course, the Labour Party largely comprised of Fabian. So definitely in the British government, but I think what we're seeing kind of worldwide, there is a lot of impact. We see this through the education system. We see this through the, I would actually argue a lot of the movement in the UN has a lot of Fabian tactics. So, psychological warfare, I would argue a lot of the tactics and the strategy from that come out of the British War Propaganda Bureau, which became the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. And a lot of the founding members of that were Fabian socialists. And so the strategy behind it, and also the power structure, because, this is a great book. I keep pointing to it. I might have referenced it last time, The Milner-Fabian Conspiracy by Ian Ritu. And he talks about the roundtable groups. Of course, this is an extension of Carol Quigley's work, who was the mentor to Bill Clinton. He wrote the famous tome, Tragedy and Hope. It's a 1,400-page tome. And it was kind of a tell-all book about these roundtable groups that are very influential, in geopolitics. So like our Council of Foreign Relations, that people might remember the famous introduction that Hillary Clinton did when she was at the Council of Foreign Relations in New York City. And she talks about how influential they are and how they're not typically getting orders from them, but they rarely have the opportunity to meet there, and that it was such an honor. So the Council of Foreign Relations is very tied in with all of this. And of course, they're very instrumental in geopolitical, I would say the geopolitical chessboard. And that was the work of Carol Quigley. He when he was an archivist actually for the CFR, and he wrote this tell-all tome, and he was very proud of what they were doing, and they got very upset with him, kind of like, we're secret for a reason. And he said, but the world needs to know, this is fantastic. He wrote a shorter book called The Anglo-American Establishment, and I think that's a really important seminal work. It's kind of an extension of William Stead's work, which was published in 1901. And he talks about something called the Great Rapprochement. And that was 100 years prior to the Kissinger China rapprochement. But the idea was kind of similar. And it was using, this merger which became the Anglo-American establishment. But it was also, to bring back to the Fabian, later Orwell called, in his book, he called it the Oceanias. And it was this idea really reminiscent of the Atlanticists that William Stead talked about. And that was the notion that they were going to create this empire of all the English-speaking countries, and it would be the Americans would be kind of the front, and the British intelligence would be kind of the, I don't want to say puppet masters, but I don't know what else to say. It's but they were the intelligence apparatus driving the operations, and then the Americans would be the front executors. So I don't know if I answered your question, but. Yeah, there's so much.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you've answered them in great detail and extensively. It's for the listener, I'm sure that this can seem like an overload. We cover a wide range of organizations, and you think about the interrelationship between, say, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, Chatham House, all of the different agendas bubbling up in these organizations, many of them at counter purposes, but you do see certain dominant themes. Courtenay, we've only got about 4 minutes left, and I really want to talk about your upcoming Cognitive Liberty Conference. But in the run-up to that, if you would, just a couple of minutes, looking as you have at the Fabian Society, the Tavistock Institute, the various kind of occultic roots of certain UN-affiliated organizations like Lucis Trust, I want to just know, your main opposition to this has always been the infringement upon cognitive liberty, the infringement upon one's own consciousness. So if you could just give us a couple of minutes on that, and then tell us a bit about your upcoming conference on the way out.
Sure. So, yeah, that is my primary opposition to it. So, I would argue that the theosophists that are kind of the underbelly of the UN. So, of course, there's Lucis Trust, which was created by Alice Bailey, who was a disciple of Madame Blavatsky, who founded Theosophical Society in 1875. And it originally was started as Lucifer Publishing. That was a little too on the nose. They changed it to Lucis Trust. And this is, they talk about being a consultancy to the UN. This was very influential on people like Robert Mueller, who says that the future of education, he created the World Core Curriculum, is going to be predicated on the works of Alice Bailey, her ascended master, Jawal Kool, and Courtenay, who is the ascended master, allegedly, for Madame Blavatsky. And they create, I think the best way I could say this is they create kind of this like Borg soup, where they're trying to blend all distinctions and all differentiation. And as humans, I think one of the things that makes humans, so special, or one of the things I really value about humans is our freedom of consciousness and our freedom of conscience, and the fact that we are individuals, and that I believe we were, as the document of our Declaration of Independence stipulates, that we were endowed with inalienable rights from our Creator. And this idea of trying to eradicate any differentiation, and this is I'm trying to make this very quick, but to return to source, to return to one, it blurs all the boundaries. And this is part of that trans movement, which I think is leading to the transhuman movement. I do think it's partially a mimetic and philosophical continuum. But yeah, so I am really trying to be a whatever I can do to instill cognitive liberty, and so that we can have freedom. Yeah.
So, and there's a big push for this August 16th and 17th. Am I right?
16th, 17th.
And, where do people find it? Where do people go? We got about 30 seconds left. Where do people go?
CognitiveLibertyConference.com is where you can find the tickets. We have both in-person as well as online tickets. And it's CognitiveLibertyConference.com. So the first day is focusing on cognitive liberty in the youth through education. And the second day is focused on political and psychological dialectical warfare, and how we can mitigate against it, I believe, is through cognitive liberty. So. Yep.
CognitiveLiberty.com, and you say that there's both an online and in-person. So sorry, say it again.
CognitiveLibertyConference.com.
Got it. Both online and in-person options. I'm looking forward to it. A wide range of speakers. Really looking forward to John Kleisick, and definitely looking forward to hearing you speak there. So, Courtenay, I really, really appreciate it. We hope to have you back. And at the Courtenay Turner podcast, you can dig deep on everything that she is working on right now. Thank you very much, Courtenay.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's it for today. If you want to find my own work, joebot.xyz, latest piece up, herded by Sheepfakes. Thank you very much, War Room Posse. Godspeed and God bless.
Are you tired of progressive corporations that continue to further alienate conservative Americans, all while eroding the future of the American dream? Companies like Starbucks strong-arming customers to support abortion, and Bud Light forcing gender ideology when all you want to do is enjoy a cool beverage. But thanks to Public Square, you don't have to fund companies like this any longer. Public Square connects you to tens of thousands of businesses that share your value for life, family, and freedom. It's free to join, plus you get discounts to many of the high-quality businesses on that platform. Start spending your hard-earned money on companies that don't hate you. Join me and the millions of patriotic Americans who love truth, our country, and our Constitution at publicsquare.com. Download the app now or visit the site at publicsquare.com. publicsquare.com. You all recognize Jim Rickards as a regular guest and wise man of the War Room. His grasp of the intersection between geopolitics and capital markets is unmatched. His financial newsletter, Strategic Intelligence, is essential reading for anyone concerned about protecting your own wealth. As you've seen during his War Room appearances, Jim has a knack for making the complex simple. And every month, Strategic Intelligence cuts through the noise and delivers actionable financial guidance. Plus, War Room members get a free copy of Jim's The New Case for Gold. This is an amazing follow-up to Ron Paul's classic. And what makes Jim's book even more crucial is that he's not a gold bug. He'll help you understand gold's significance on the global stage as well as in your own portfolio. Go sign up now and claim your free book at our exclusive website, rickardswarroom.com. That's rickardswarroom.com.